friends, this is means fourth energy conclave. I am fortunate to be participant of the third energy conclave, so forth. Rightly, Mint has chosen two topics: the new political economy of oil and technology acting as a disruptor. Since both the topics are very apt and very timingly we are discussing these topics. Gone are the days the triple digit oil price will be there. When we took responsibility in the last May 14, oil price was $105. This is the outcome of the new world, new geopolitics of the world, what we are talking today. The oil politics of oil economy. The Indian Prime Minister is visited that country, I think, after nearly 4 decades. This is the sign of the changing oil economy, changing oil politics of the world. Now, friends, time has come. Producers will have their own role, but gradually the famous word is now giving its impact. Consumer is the king. Market will determine, market will prioritize the reasonable and responsible price. And India has to play a big role. And using the very forum of OPEC, India, we raised as a country, India, we raised the issue. Gone are the days of Asian premium. We need Asian discount. As an energy consumer, the new government has a priority to divert its source. We all are concerned about the carbon footprint of the world. We have our responsibility. We are not bogging to anybody's illegal demands or immoral demands. But as a responsible country, we have our responsibility towards carbon management. Consciously, the government has chosen the path as a proactive measure. We have to divert our energy source. We have to move towards renewable energy. We have to move towards gas-based energy. Our per capita energy consumption is low. With the aspiring society, with the aspiring moving community, as a country of youthfulness, when this government has an ambitious plan for making India, skill India, digital India, to link Indian community to world development, energy is the first requirement, energy is the first precondition to that aspiration. We have to go for the overseas acquisition. This is the time. India is recognized as a big superpower. All the investors are interested to put their bet in Indian market. We have to escalate our energy diplomacy. We have to move towards the technology. On my concluding points, Mint has rightly initiated a debate, desired to take this debate to a newer high regarding the changing world scenario and technology intervention. India can be the laboratory, India can be the leader, India can be the pathfinder for the world community. Friends, we have to work in a synergy. We have to convert this challenge, convert this grim scenario of the world oil economy to our advantage. I am a strong belief. Thank you, friends.
The structure of the discussion will take on from what the Minister has said. I would request them to give their views for 3 minutes each, and then we'll take it on from there. I would like Mr. Bagchi to start. Yeah.
Firstly, I feel that last June or July 2014, nobody in the world had predicted that a year later or 6 months after that, oil prices would be where they are. which points to the fact that even the best experts, the most knowledgeable people on this subject are not able to predict which way the market will go. And that holds true, that has always held true, that holds true today, and that will, I think, continue to hold true. We can only speculate, we can guess, we can make informed, calculated guesses, but largely we, at the end of the day, have to go along with what happens and how it turns out. Now, how it has turned out for us, fortunately, we were being threatened by $150, $180 barrel prices being talked about last year. And this is a happy situation for us overall. The E&P companies perhaps are not doing so well financially because of it. There may be refining margins going down in the marketing and refining companies, but overall for the country, there has been a substantial saving, and if prices remain in the moderate range, there will continue to be. So that is firstly a good thing. Secondly, one should, I feel that this is such a volatile market that it can again come back to, of course, it may not come back to 100 plus levels that it did earlier, but very quickly it can come back to $75, $80 levels. And that can happen by a reduction in, for example, beginning this July, US shale production has shown a dip. So far, even though the prices were down, efficiency had increased, drilling times had gone down, and they were exploiting their best acreage, etc. So most of the basins or most of the plays were able to maintain their output. But now it is definitely the most major plays are showing decline in production, and it's a gradual decline, but it is a decline. So suppose with the with China having taken the steps that it has taken, the devaluation, etc., if its demand picks up a little, American demand is already picking up, and American production starts falling gradually, OPEC being largely stable, in fact increasing a little bit if Iran comes in, then we may see a bounce back to prices of 75, 80, by which time again most of the shale producers will find it profitable. So it may turn out to be a seesaw situation according to if this is the way it plays out. This is a good time for us to, as China is doing, to build up our strategic reserves, and a couple of super tankers have already arrived in Visakhapatnam, and that those measures are being taken. This is also a good time for our companies to pick up some good acreage if it's available anywhere in the world, because most of the big oil majors are cutting down on expenditure this year. They have cut down by 20, 25, 30%, and therefore government's outlook and effort is that if this opportunity can be utilized in picking up good acreage around the world, we should do so. And therefore, if a collaborative effort is made to negotiate better terms and conditions for purchase, already we are going in for more spot purchases than earlier, which is a good, which is natural perhaps in this kind of a market. But if a collaborative effort can be made, and this is what is being explored, then definitely we can arrive at even better terms and conditions for our imports.
Mr. Sinha.
I think I'm very glad that the session is called Political Economy. We often forget that the basis of economics is politics, going back. But for Mr. Alfred Marshall, we would be talking less mathematics and more politics to understand economics. But very quickly, I think nobody should predict prices. Very clear. Every prediction is wrong. What I worry sometimes is that this, when you get a windfall like this, a bonanza like this, reforms get pushed down the road. Because you can afford it, you're getting the space that you did not have. You tend to avoid taking the harsh decisions. So I think that is something, and often we take our growth for granted. I remember 2008, 9, we are dealing from the world. They can go to hell. We are the new emerging. So we often have this tendency. I hope we will correct ourselves. What I'm more worried about, and there I agree with Lord Desai, is that the global economy seems to be in a long-term low growth equilibrium. Let's be very clear about that. The days of easy money, the days of funds flushing around is over. China is an example of it. China built itself up as the factory of the world. It has massively overinvested in everything. And now, to move to a new growth model, they have to change their structures, political structures, which they are unable to do. And therefore, they are exporting their deflation out. Now, when you're exporting a deflation out, well, yes, you can be happy about it in some sense that we'll get a goods cheaper. But the fact remains that you will not then be able to export yourselves into growth. Let's be very, very clear on that. So while the oil prices are down, we are saving on foreign exchange. Absolutely, it's not going to be easy. But I'll now come to what I really want to talk about, which is that Iran we've talked about. Now please remember, Iran came on the table precisely because it had hit a wall financially. And Iran had to get out of the sanctions regime. So while Iran coming on board decreases oil prices, Iran was forced to come on the table precisely because it had ran against a fiscal wall. Inflation was high, growth was not subdued, it was almost over. And when the Saudis say that we have let oil prices fall because we want to put the shale oil guys out of business, no. Saudis were basically driven by Iran. They were driving Iran out of the business. That was the main point. And it's good and bad. I tell you why it's good and bad. I've seen the change happen in Iranian society. The spread of Wahhabism through the Saudi, 73 onwards. I mean, I will not say that you can blame Saudi for an act of terrorism. They have pushed Islam away from the normal lived Islam, which was a tolerant, happy, easygoing with everybody else, into a corner. And that is allowing places like organizations like IS to grow, Daesh to grow. Unfortunately, at this stage, even with oil prices being what they are, Saudis still have lots of depth in them. They're still able, and if you saw the WikiLeaks, they've been spending money all over the world, pushing out traditional Islam and putting the Wahhabi or the Salafi versions into it. And that really frightens me. IS, please remember, largest source of funding for IS used to be illegal sales of oil to Turkey. So at least the prices coming down will affect it, but not very, very much. The world is uncertain. What will Russia do? Russia needs high oil prices. The collapse of prices 5 years ago, a temporary collapse of prices, suddenly the Russian economy is growing at 5.2, contracted in next year to minus 7.2. Now that is a steep swing in 1 year, 7.9 I think. The Russian government finances, which were running in a surplus of 3.7, shrank into negative balance. What does Russia do? When pushed against a fiscal wall, does Russia become more aggressive? It wants to be aggressive for two reasons. One is to hold the country together, two is to push up oil prices. But the oil prices will not be pushed up. So I think we are looking at a lot of uncertainties going ahead. And while it's good that the prices have come down for India, given us an envelope, I hope we can use it. Thank you.
Devashi, so no one should predict prices.
Yeah. So no one should predict prices. End of the matter is that nobody knows, but you have to prepare what is coming in our own way of all the information that is there. Because people said peak oil. People said oil would run out. But then at that point of time, nobody knew about 3D seismic technologies, horizontal drilling. That came and suddenly oil was in plenty. Now, if you are talking about today, we have oil is at $45. We have, you have the shale gas in US. So every time, they may be out of business now, but every time oil crosses $55, $60, as Harold Ham says, they would again come back. And they would come back, and that would act as kind of a ceiling for oil prices for some time to come. The other important element which Mr. Sinha said is the politics of oil, is that US as such on its own, maybe it was having oil independence from imports within 2-3 years. With this setback also, it's matter of time. But if you take Mexico, Canada and US together, they really don't need the Persian Gulf oil. Then what happens? If they don't depend on the Persian Gulf oil, China is 11 million barrel a day, we are at 4 million barrel a day. Together we are the biggest bloc. So are we ready to take up the role of the global policing that US was doing? That's the next political question which will be asked. And we have, I was checking OVL's investment over the period of time. I mean, there are thoughts that at low price regime we must ramp up investment, but we have a secular trend and we have invested throughout the year. But we have invested in geographies. We need to now assess, when you are assessing investment, whether we have the diplomatic and political ability to manage certain geographies like Southern Sudan, like Venezuela. Now, Venezuela would probably behave in a certain manner. If oil was at $130, they would fulfill all their commitment. But their budget is getting balanced at $130. So they would probably, not let the company take out the money with oil at $45 because there is already social unrest in those countries. So the good thing is that this gives us the breathing time, but it also gives us the opportunity to think.
I have been in this business almost 40 years, and the dates are etched in my memory. 1973, 77, 86, 97, 99, 2001, 2008, 2009, and kind of January 2015, and we're still in the middle of it. So you're absolutely right. Even the people who are in the business for a very long period of time, they find it very hard to predict prices. But that doesn't mean it is totally random. There is, this is about political economy, so there is laws of supply and demand, there is technology, there is geology, and so some things we do know enough about, and even during the housing crisis and China crisis, there were people who got it right. So a challenge for the country, for the businesses, for the politicians, the strategists, is to understand the broad channel under which the energy prices and supply disruption can take place and make sure that India is resilient to those kinds of shocks. And in the future, as you go to 2035, 2050, the oil is more richly endowed in the Middle East. So for India, Indian companies, it is important to have long-term linkages. Our linkages with Middle East go back 2,000 plus years. And it's important that the commercial linkages get enhanced. Just some simple stats, which I often share with the employees. If you kind of look at the geographical arc from, call it Indonesia, all the way to Iran, that's about 8,000 kilometers, maybe 7,000 kilometers. And you say, which are the companies that have deep critical mass of technical people? Once you have geology, oil production requires a lot of intellectual capital and knowledge. It is not auto manufacturing where you can do it relatively quickly. So, and the two, if you look at ONGC and Cairn, the two of the largest oil producers, if we take them together, there's no other country that has the people resources even remotely approaching that. So yes, we need to think about energy in India, but we need to think about the broader geography. People do matter.
The current uncertainty which is surrounding, will it impact or somehow fray the social contract which has been formed in some of these countries? Do we as a country, can we manage those relationships?
With lower oil prices, definitely there are some countries which are quite badly hit. Those who had tried in the OPEC meeting last year to push for cut in production. Venezuela, Nigeria, Algeria, Angola. Now, they are very badly hit by the drop in price, and there can be increasing pain and social unrest in these countries if the prices remain low for a long time. There's no denying that. India will, whether it's someplace, whether it's Sudan, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's any other country in which there are these unrests, if we are purely a buyer, it's a different thing. I think in the next few years, if oil stays within 80, it is still going to be a buyer's market. So with the diversification of sources that we are doing right now, that part will not be a problem. The investments made will have to be done very judiciously, and very robust conditions of, whether force majeure conditions or other safeguard conditions will have to be built in those agreements so that our investments are protected.
For a lot of companies, the reserves keep on increasing, the production keeps on dipping. How do you answer that?
Yeah, it does come in part on geology. If you think of local domestic production in the country, geology is important, and we have knowns and unknowns. We certainly are beneficiaries of two very large fields, one offshore, one onshore. But, and there have been lots of dialogue about this. It's a matter of public record. Our gas reserves the new gas reserves involve significantly deep offshore, high temperature, high pressure type reservoirs.
That brings us to the end of the session, and in my mind, oil has always been a puzzle, and the only thing certain about it is unpredictability, which has already been established by this panel. Thanks a lot for your time, gentlemen. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us.